From the Notorious throwing a hilarious diss at the problem child, to Jake saying that a fight between them is inevitable, here's how Conor McGregor clapped back at Jake Paul. In a sport that makes a living off of abusing people verbally and physically, Conor stayed at the very top of the list, and recently, he called the social media star a donkey. Clearly, McGregor makes other trash talkers look like it's their first day on the job, and his most recent outburst was directed at Jake as he prepares to take on Nate Diaz in a boxing match. But it's not like Paul's innocent in this situation either. I mean, they don't call him the problem child for nothing. And the guy's never innocent. The YouTubing hothead starts beef with every fighter he comes across. It may be great for publicity, but he's been in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons way before he became a boxer. He's called out McGregor multiple times in the past few years, despite the fact that he's been inactive ever since his last fight against Dustin Poirier. But if you think the UFC champ's just gonna sit back and listen to Jake flap his gums, you've got another thing coming. In an interview with Ariel Helwani, Conor fired right back and told the world what he thought about the internet's problem child, and also discussed his upcoming business ventures and his promising return to the octagon. When Conor was asked about the upcoming fight between Diaz and Jake, it couldn't be more obvious who he favored. And what's even more entertaining is that Diaz and McGregor have their own extremely intense rivalry, but still the Notorious one prefers Nate over Paul any day of the week. Conor made it clear who he was backing and completely bulldozed over Jake in the process. His creative use of metaphors for both fighters was really funny, and he said Paul was like a donkey and Diaz was like a cat. Ugh! Not gonna lie, that's a brutal analogy, and McGregor's donkey diss is too funny. Conor did admit that at the end of the day, donkeys still have a little kick in them though, and that's something Nate'll have to be careful about. But besides that, he thinks Nate's completely in the clear. It's not the first time Conor's clapped back at the social media star. He once called Jake and his brother Logan dingbats. I can't be the only one who thinks that's hilarious. Ever since then, the Notorious has been asked about all the fights the Pauls are involved in, and if he'd be willing to go one-on-one against them. When Jake signed with the Professional Fighters League, things only got more intense. The PFL's butting heads with the UFC, the promotion that shaped McGregor into the star that he is today. So it makes sense that he's not a fan of the rival fight league. And Jake, coming from the PFL, only adds fuel to the fire when you consider the fact that they already hate each other's guts. To top it all off, Jake owns an equity stake in the PFL, so he's fully invested in making it a huge success, which is why he pushed Diaz so hard for a match. He needs the hype. McGregor says Diaz is gonna knock Jake's head off, and he can't wait to see it. It might be brutal, but I love it. The Notorious one's also calling the problem child a wally, which is British slang for someone who's incredibly foolish. And I've gotta say, as far as McGregor's disses go, that one's surprisingly mild. The Irishman's even attacking Paul's business strategies. In a now-deleted tweet, Conor wrote, "Numbnuts gave away 50% of a future purse if he does an MMA bout? What an idiot!" And while Jake's launched his brand into financial success, McGregor's no slouch at making a buck either. He joined the UFC over a decade ago when he was on the brink of unemployment, and now he's one of the richest sportsmen in the world. Talk about a success story. According to Forbes, Conor topped the list of the richest sports stars in the world in 2021, and he was worth more than global superstars like Cristiano Ronaldo and LeBron James. Now that's a major win. Conor's had big success with his whiskey brand Proper 12, and that's only one more thing in his long list of achievements. So Jake isn't messing with any old UFC champ, McGregor's hot stuff.
What the is up, you Irish? Good morning, Conor McGregor. I know you're probably beating up old dudes in a bar right now, or maybe you're jacking off because you're sick of fucking.
But the problem child couldn't care less about how successful Conor is, and there's no way he isn't clapping back. The two have been hurling insults at each other for a long time, and after the UFC champ called the YouTuber a donkey, Paul fired back immediately on his brother Logan's podcast, saying that the Irishman was funny as and that every time Conor roasts him, it only makes him want to beat the out of him even more. Jake loves bringing up the fact that McGregor went up against Nate not once but twice, and that he failed to knock him out both times. So he wants to prove to everyone that he's on a different level than the Notorious by knocking Diaz out. Jake's even attacking Conor's new beer brand, Forged Irish Stout. I mean, an eye for an eye, right? Conor insults his business moves, so he disses his right back. Jake said, "You're gonna be sitting there with your new beer company, which is failing, realizing that you pissed your life away." Jake also loves reminding Conor that he won't be famous forever, and that because he refused his offer for a big money fight, he's chosen the wrong path. But Jake's offer is still on the table, and he says that after he knocks Diaz out, McGregor will finally realize that fighting him is the biggest match for him, and he can call him when reality hits him in the face. So, now that their feud is hotter than ever, when will we get to see Paul versus McGregor happen? Well, clearly the problem child's doing everything he can to bait Conor into the ring. And he's come up with what he calls a real as offer worth $50 million that's currently being presented to McGregor's team.
My team sent you a $50 million offer this morning. $50 million cash, proof of funds, the biggest fight offer.
Team. That's how badly he wants to punch Conor in the face. According to Jake, they're still in the early planning stages, but he initially called the Irishman out in an Instagram video when he presented the deal and accused Conor of being too chicken to take it. Jake says that Conor keeps dodging him because he doesn't want to lose to a YouTuber. I mean, if it's true, as a professional MMA fighter, that's really humiliating. Jake also pointed to their boxing records as proof that Conor's scared, saying that he stands at 6 wins and 1 loss, while McGregor's is 0 and 1. The Notorious hasn't stepped in the octagon since his trilogy fight against the Diamond in 2021, and he's been out of the game thanks to a fractured tibia and fibula. He'll be making his return to the spotlight in 2023, in a highly anticipated comeback fight against Michael Chandler. And with the way Jake's pushing him to accept his offer, we might get a killer grudge fight between the two sometime later. But since McGregor's still contractually tied to the UFC, it'll be hard for Jake to convince him to go out of his way for a match. Conor's made exceptions before, like the time Dana White gave him the go-ahead to fight Floyd Mayweather. So with the right amount of persuasion, Dana might give Conor the okay to scrap Jake. Even during his press conference ahead of his match with Diaz, Jake kept sending a message to the Notorious One, and getting these two in the ring would bring in some major cheddar because of the clout they have. So from a business standpoint, it's a no-brainer. Paul with his internet fame, Conor with his insane fan base. But if the problem child wants a shot at Conor, he'll need a credibility boost first, and beating the out of Nate will give him that. That won't be easy for Jake to pull off, but it's the only road for a shot at McGregor. What's driving Jake is a need to prove Conor wrong, and knocking Diaz out is the way to do it. If we do see Jake versus Conor in the future, there's no question that it'll be one of the biggest fights in combat sports history, and it's a match you won't want to miss for anything. So there you have it, fight fans. From Jake saying that a fight between them is inevitable, to the Notorious throwing a hilarious diss at the problem child, that's how Conor McGregor clapped back at Jake Paul.